All right, let's talk about digital security. We spend all this time building these super complex, almost unpickable digital locks, right? But what if the key itself is the weak point? What if someone could just guess it? That's what we're digging into today. Why the size of a cryptographic key is maybe the most important thing of all when it comes to keeping our digital lives safe. So let's get right to the heart of it. Here's the big question. If your encryption algorithm is, top of the line, super strong, can a tiny little key completely undermine the whole thing and make it insecure? And the answer, maybe surprisingly, is a huge yes. Let's break down exactly why that is.
I love this analogy because it just hits the nail on the head. Think about it. Your encryption algorithm, that's like a massive state-of-the-art bank vault door. Tons of steel, complex locking mechanisms. It's a beast. But what if the key to open that beast of a door is just a flimsy little house key that a million other people have? Well, all that engineering on the door is kind of pointless, right? That's exactly what's happening here. The key is the Achilles heel. Okay, so this whole idea of a weak key brings us to the main villain of our story, the brute force attack. And the name really says it all. This isn't some slick, clever hack you see in the movies. Nope. It's just a relentless, stubborn assault. An attacker literally just tries every single possible key, one after another. They know that if they just keep going, they're guaranteed to find the right one eventually. It's all about having enough time and computing power.
So what are we even talking about when we say key size? Well, it's just the number of bits in the key. Simple enough? But here's the magic trick, the part that's so crucial to understand. Every time you add just one more bit to the key, you don't just add one more possibility. You double the total number of possible keys. So the security doesn't just go up a little bit, it explodes exponentially. And that, right there, is the secret sauce of modern crypto. Yeah, the basic idea here is actually super simple. The more possible keys there are, the harder it is to just stumble upon the right one by guessing. It's like, if you have to find the right key in a pile of 10, it's easy. A pile of a million, harder. Our goal is to make that pile of keys so ridiculously, unimaginably huge that it's just not practical to even start looking. So, how does a brute force attack actually work? It's almost laughably straightforward. First, the attacker gets a hold of your encrypted message. Then they just start trying keys. Okay, let's try key number 1. Nope, that just spits out garbage. Key number 2, still garbage. Key number 3, and so on and so on and so on. They just hammer away at it, relentlessly, until one of the keys finally turns that scrambled mess into something readable. It's not about being clever, it's a battle of pure, raw computing power. Okay, all this talk about brute force might sound a bit abstract. So let's make it real. Let's talk about the cautionary tale of DES, the data encryption standard. For a long time, DES was the champion, the absolute king of security. But its story, its fall from grace, is the perfect lesson in why key size matters so much. This timeline really lays it all out. Back in 1977, DES becomes the federal standard. Its 56-bit key, people thought it was basically unbreakable. But then, the 80s and 90s happen. Computers get faster and faster, Moore's law in action, and people start getting nervous. They see the writing on the wall. And then, boom, 1998. The worry becomes reality. The Electronic Frontier Foundation builds a machine called DeepCrack, and it cracks a DES key in less than 3 days. The king was dead. And it wasn't because the algorithm was bad, it was just that technology had caught up and surpassed it. And the big lesson from the whole DES saga is this. Security isn't a finish line. You can't just set it up and walk away. It's a constant arms race. As the bad guys get more powerful computers, our defenses have to get stronger to match. You have to scale with technology. So if we have to scale, how much bigger do we need to go? This is where the numbers get, well, they get absolutely insane. We're about to talk about the power of exponents, and you're going to see why a modern key isn't just a little bit better than an old one. It's mind-blowingly, astronomically better. All right, let's start small to get a feel for this. Let's say you have a tiny 10-bit key. That gives you 1,024 possible combinations. 1,000 keys, I mean, your laptop could probably check every single one of those in the blink of an eye. No problem at all. Okay, now let's jump up to the DES key, the 56-bit one. The number of possibilities just explodes. We're now at 72 quadrillion. That's a 72 with 15 zeros after it. Back in the day, that number was so huge, people thought it was impossible to ever get through.
But as we saw with Deep Crack, impossible doesn't always stay impossible.
Okay, deep breath. Now for a modern, standard 128-bit key. The number of possible keys is, well, it's that monster on the screen, 340 undecillion. Look, let's put it this way. That number is so big, so fundamentally incomprehensible, that if you could build a computer the size of the sun that could check 1,000,000,000,000 keys a second, it would still take you billions of years to try them all. It's just not gonna happen. That is the power of exponents. So, after seeing a number that big, you're probably thinking, okay, why stop there? If bigger is better, why not just make a 1,000,000-bit key and call it a day? Be secure forever. And, that's a perfectly logical question. But it turns out there's a trade-off. Yeah, it all boils down to this: security versus efficiency. Bigger keys obviously give you way more security, but they also take more work to use. I mean, your computer has to do the math too. Every time you encrypt or decrypt something, which happens constantly when you're browsing the web or sending a message, your phone or laptop is crunching those numbers. If the keys were just ridiculously huge, everything would slow down to a crawl. So the whole game is to find that sweet spot, right? A key that's big enough to be totally out of reach for attackers, but still fast enough for us to use every day without noticing. And that search for the sweet spot is what makes security a constantly moving target. It really is an arms race. The attackers build faster computers, so the defenders have to build bigger keys. It's this back and forth that just never ever stops. So, what does this mean for you today? Well, the devices and websites you use every day are probably using 128-bit or 256-bit keys as their standard. But, and this is the important part, the experts are never sleeping. They are constantly reviewing these standards, looking at what's next for computing power, and trying to make sure our security standards stay way ahead of the curve.
Now, obviously, this is a huge topic, and we had to keep things focused, so we didn't get into the nitty-gritty of the hardware used for attacks or how different algorithms perform against each other. And we definitely didn't touch the big one, quantum computing, which, well, that's a whole different can of worms that could change everything. We'll save those for another day. Okay, so let's boil it all down. What are the big things to remember? 1. Key size is basically everything when it comes to stopping a brute force attack. 2. The story of DES taught us that secure today does not mean secure tomorrow. Technology always moves forward. And that brings us to number 3, the biggest point of all. Security isn't a destination, it's a process. It has to keep evolving, always. Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? DES was the absolute gold standard and it fell. So what's guarding our data today? What's the new champion? And maybe the more important question is, for how long? When does its clock run out? That's a story for next time. Thanks for joining me.